through this in more depth. This today's session is around basically cutting wasted analysis time. So, um, a lot of I mean, any job really, but I think especially in the data field, it's so easy to go down different rabbit holes. It really depends a lot how your data team's set up. It's not as easy if you're like embedded in a team in a product that you're working with, and so you have a lot of context around the problem you're solving day to day. Like if you're going to do the daily stand-ups, the weekly planning meetings with like your engineer and PM and designer, everyone. But a lot of data teams aren't set up that way. A lot of folks are understaffed in the data org, so maybe you're covering multiple teams. Maybe you're more of in kind of like a service-oriented centralized model. And that makes understanding the context of the problem really challenging. And um, questions can come in that actually seem like pretty concrete and pretty specific around how you're going to answer them. And it's really easy to spend, not days, but I mean like weeks doing an analysis, even communicating with your stakeholder that whole time. But it's like you're just kind of talking past each other or like speaking different languages, but you feel like you're actually saying the same thing. And then you come through with the analysis and you get some coordinates that are like, oh, this is like interesting, but this isn't really what I'm looking for, or like, thank you, like I'll take a look at this, but then nothing ever happens. A lot of that can be solved upstream by just, reframing questions, asking the right questions, getting the right context. And something I've been finding lately is, there's a lot of talk, and I'm not just finding it around like this kind of reframing questions things, but anything around like rigor and experimentation, around uh, like checking myself on if I'm looking at spurious kind of random relationships. There's all this talk around like, LLM is like being, hallucinating and kind of being biased. But as humans, like we're very biased as well. So I actually do find there's a lot of opportunity when we build agentic systems ourselves to kind of just like put checks and balances on our own bias and our own thinking so we can have guardrails and make sure um, we start our analysis from the very beginning in the right direction. So Sravya is going to talk about that a bit today.
Can you all see my
Um,
screen?
yeah, I can see your screen. Can you all, if you maybe drop a yes or no in the chat, but I can see it.
Okay,
Nice. We got
awesome.
some thumbs up.
Yeah, I'm on this new computer and I'm currently doing Zoom on web browser. I realized I didn't have the app until like last minute. So sorry, folks, if there's some technical difficulties, but thank you so much, Sean. I could do a quick intro about myself. Sean did go over a bunch of it, but Sravya Madipalli, I am the co-founder of this along with Sean. And hi, we lead the AI Analyst Lab here. I have experience of around 14, 15 years now in data science, starting with Microsoft and most recently at Superhuman, which is Grammarly. So have been into data science in Silicon Valley for a long, long time right now. Okay, so like Sean said, we are basically going to look into the most, I would say, the first question, the first thing that we want to do when data or analysis comes into place, right? So we run like a bunch of courses. We run Claude Code Analytics Bootcamp course. We run 5 week frameworks of data science course called AI Analytics for Builders. And the first thing that we teach that we taught in that course, we had one cohort out, and the first thing we taught in that course is about framing your questions right. Because if that's not correct, guys, if you're going after the wrong problem, the entire work that you're going to that you spent your bandwidth on is not going to be held, like, it's just utter waste. So, and we knew about the importance of this, but to be honest, until our students actually picked, that's the biggest thing that they learned, we were like super surprised. This was something that we did as part of our course cohort discussions, where we asked people what was the single most valuable thing you learned. The most popular answers was that push back on the question and actually reframing the question, because you see, especially it happened with me as well when I started my work in data. We are used to getting questions from so many different stakeholders for so many different reasons. And this is, I would say, more relationship, more about data. Like it's a combination of so many skill sets, not purely data skill set. And but that totally affects the impact of you as an individual that you could bring to the to the company wherever you are. So that's the reason we believe this is one of the most important skill set. This is beyond technical. This is, I would say, in the frameworks and thinking, in analytical thought process, and also your personality type. Like, we are so used to saying yes for everything. Now this I hopefully reframes your thinking, like it did to most of our students. And like, trust me, they all had like AI analytics, like a repo of 60 skills and agents. Like, they had all of that with them. That was also very important, that people really liked that. But this, which is like the most basic thing, came out as like the top one that people write. Okay, so where are we? Let's talk about like making this whole thing concrete, right? So let's say we have same AI, same data, but we have two tabs, right? So we have a vague question and a sharp question, and what is the difference between both of them, right? So if you look at a vague question, analyze user engagement. These are some things that you probably keep seeing a bunch of people, like your stakeholders come and ask you, hey, what's the user engagement? And this is basically could be so many things when we talk about user engagement, right? So it gives everything but also nothing. It basically is like three paragraphs of generic observations, because like DAO is relatively stable, but some segments are worth monitoring, nothing you can act on. So this is like what a vague question can encompass. It could mean so many things, versus what a sharp question looks like. Which segment drove the engagement drop last month, so we can decide where to focus? So you can actually see there are particular frame, like segments of this question that you can divide and understand what each of them mean. For example, there's a named segment, right? Because he's talking about a specific area, a specific user group where you might have seen the drop. And then it is also talking about it being a quantified driver, like understanding the what behind it. And it also has like a clear recommendation. For example, what would we do if we know the answer for it, which is the most important thing, that I would say, especially people who are just starting out, or people who are used to the service based of data types of data service data based orgs. We are not used to this setup at all, where we basically take a vague question in, do all of the complicated backing ourselves, and finally end up at a place that we could have gotten to far more like in a far more shorter time, with far more clarity. But we basically didn't start there, and hence it took so much, so long than when compared to like without it. And guess what? This is something that's not just at work. This is something that you'll see in multiple places. I myself have we just until now spoke about how whatever we're talking about question framing, like, changes how you work, right? For example, can you look at why signups are down, and then you spend a day on the charts, and then, hey, this is not what I meant something else. This is something that we see on our day-to-day work. But guess what, where this is more important, this is actually one of our students mentioned this too, on how this question framing helped them, like, crack get better at interviewing. Which is, if you go to interviews, like if you look at what Meta's like data analytics questions are, they start very vague as well. Like, how would you measure success of this feature? It doesn't basically cover any of the specifics, and it's upon you as an interviewee, how you're taking this question and how you're segmenting it down into multiple segments, and how you're actually tying a metric to it, and how you're actually ensuring that you ask the interviewer the right questions about, hey, what are we trying to understand with answering this question? How are we going to execute on this, right? So these things are something that interviewers look for as well, not so this skill set that you're going to learn today, it's just going to go way beyond your work. And another very interesting piece that totally came together in today's world is AI. So you might have seen this a lot. This is what you could call like context engineering. You could call so many things, where if you give AI something vague, it has a lot of scope to cook things up, right? You could call it, I mean, if you don't give it enough information, it's going to basically assume a bunch of information, right? It's kind of like, an intern you work with that doesn't have all the information. So ensuring that you're specific, and you probably have maybe already a system like AI Analyst system that we have, like a repo full of skills and agents that we built. Even our free repo has them, guys. Sean can like share the free repo where we actually build the system where if you ask a question to Claude Code, it actually tells you, hey, this is too vague, can you get more specific? So you could build an AI system that does that for you, so that you don't have to be the person that's telling it every time to be specific. If not, you better be specific, because the more vague our questions are, the harder it would be for the for Claude Code to actually understand and help you solve the problem in the right way. And this is where we basically talk about the exact specifics of what I've been talking about, right? So this is basically a 3-check framework. You could call it like, a 30-second gut check, right? So every analytical question should pass all these 3 questions. What are those? The first one is decision type. I would say this is the most important one, which basically talks about what decision does this question inform. If you can't name a decision, you stop right there. This is probably the hardest as well. Imagine if you have a VP of product coming to you and ask a question, and you're like, hey, this is pretty, thanks for this question. Could you please tell what will my answer for this question change what you and your team's working on? Or how do you want to take this answer and implement something? Because at the end of the day, if you're working on something that doesn't prove to be impactful, it's not going to help for anything. It's not going to help for your work that you do at your place. It's not going to help you get promoted. It's not going to help you, if you want to interview, what did you work and what's the impact? You're not going to have a full closed loop, right? And the second most important thing in this framework is being data grounded. Can I actually answer this with data that exists? I know this sounds pretty basic, but I'll be honest, there's so many questions that come to us for data teams where the data is not entirely fully present or half present or like not fully baked. And does it make sense to answer this question with the amount of data that we have? Or do we just wait, go implement, get the infrastructure, talk to engineers, get the tracking implemented, and then come back to it maybe next quarter? Instead of giving half baked answers that are not going to help you make that decision that you probably pushed your stakeholder to give you, right? Like, what's the decision? They're going to come up with a decision, but guess what? If you don't have data, or if you have half baked data, it doesn't help. And the third most important thing in this framework is being specific enough. How will I know, or how will you know basically when you're done? Is there a metric, a comparison, a time frame, you know, to make sure that you have some sort of a bound? Scope creep is the most important things, or the most thing that weighs anyone down. So ensuring that all of this is under the scope is also very important. Yeah. So before we spend an hour analyzing, spending 30 seconds here, um, to understand, does my question actually satisfy these 3 rules? Is the decision tied? Is the data grounded? And is it specific enough? Now, let's go to the next one. Okay, so let's actually watch one get sharp, right? So let's start vague. Why are signups done? No decision done from what? No, we don't have for whom. We basically have it really vague around saying no, like, no decision, like we can't basically make out anything from this question, right? So how can we make it slightly more specific? Why did signups drop 12% last month? So it's better than the last time. The first question, right? We have a number now, but what would you actually do with the answer? So the decision is still unclear, right? Now we can make it even more sharper. Did the pricing page redesign cause the 12% sign up drop in the 2 weeks post launch? And the decision comes, should we roll it back? Right? So, this basically has the decision, which is rolling back if it's not great. Yes, we got that frame, that part of thing figured out. Now, what about data? The data is a data grounded. It is because we are looking for signups plus, and we also have a launch date, and we have all the specific things. So that's data groundedness. And what about the specificity? We have things specifically saying that attribution, and we also have recommendation. So this is basically, I would say, the most minimal thing where we start. To ensure that we go from a vague question to actually a sharper question. Awesome. So, so that's this is something that you would probably have something at work. But what about, like, I have an example for interviews as well, right? So this let's say an interviewer asks this: how would you measure success of the new search feature? This is a pretty common question, guys. Like, if you go to any of data scientists or like product analytics or maybe even data product analyst questions, you would find a metric or a measuring success type of question, right? And most candidates, especially like from my experience, the more junior ones, even more, they immediately start listing the metrics, saying, hey, DAO, retention, engagement, I'll probably look into this, that, and that, right? So, yeah, that maybe feels productive, but it's actually the trap. The candidates who get offers and actually offers for higher, level roles, they actually pause and ask clarifying questions first. Success for whom, right? Because we are talking about success for this new feature, but who is it are we talking about? And ensuring that, is it power users or everyone? So we need to have a tier one set of questions and then a tier two set of questions under it. So question like success for whom is a tier one question, and a tier two question under that is, what segment of users, is it power users or for everyone? And then another set of question that you could ask is, measured against what is the baseline, right? So this basically also, this framework around ensuring that the specificity and ensuring that you have data groundedness and ensuring that there's a decision tied to it, it's also going to it's going to be super helpful for you for interviews as well. So the question that could be pretty targeted, that you could start work on the interview, is once you get the clarifying questions answered and get to a question, something like what it says at the bottom. For search targeting power users, what's the primary success metric, the guardrail, and what would be good enough to keep investing, a look like at the end of 30 days, right? Awesome. So, a sharp question usually carries a hunch, it has a hypothesis. The most important thing that we need as data people, irrespective of, you don't have to be a data person, irrespective of your role. If you work with data, you need to come with a hypothesis, because all we're trying to do is either validate or invalidate the hypothesis. And we have multiple ways to do that, right? We have A B testing, we have causal inference, we have correlation analysis, we could validate to some extent, but what we need is ensuring that we need to have that hypothesis. And the move that separates rigorous analysts from everyone else is that you basically have a rejection condition as well. What would confirm the hypothesis and what would reject the hypothesis, right? So before you touch the data, you need to basically say it out loud. What result would prove you wrong? Here's the mid-market churn is driven by failed onboarding, not pricing, what would confirm it? You could say something like, hey, churn clustered in accounts that never finished setup. Pricing absent from exit interviews. That these are some things that would confirm it, but what would reject it? Churn spread evenly across onboarding states. Pricing dominates exit interviews. So this is something that would reject this hypothesis. So it is very important to ensure that you have a hypothesis and you have pre-written rules on what confirms it and what rejects it, right? Now, another very important thing is not every question deserves the same effort. So score each one on two axes. You have impact and you have feasibility, right? So top left is basically something that you do first. It basically is a question that clearly drives the decision and the data already exists. That's where you start every single time. But what about the top right, the second part of the matrix? It's like basically you plan for it. High impact, but you're missing the data or you're missing instrumentation. So you probably need to, stake it out for the next quarter. Okay. And what is the leftmost one? This is something that you would use it for buffers. You basically do if you have time. This is basically something that are quick wins and that are dashboards. You basically ensure that when your bigger work is blocked, you have something to fill your bandwidth with, right? And the most important one of all is the skip one, the bottom, the rightmost corner in the bottom, right? This is the most important thing because a lot of asks, so many data scientists and analysts I worked with, that needs to be skipped actually falls under one of the other categories that you don't want it to happen, right? So it's basically hard and uninteresting. This is the graveyard of half, finished side quests, right? Ensuring that you say no early and ensuring that you pinpoint to why you're saying no, right? That it's low impact, it's low feasible, you don't have data grounded, there's no specific decision you could make. And these are some things that you need to ensure that you write down and talk with the stakeholder and share with the stakeholder and give them a reason for why you are skipping it. But if they don't want you to skip it, they better come with those answers related to the type of decision they're going to make. If you give the answer and they, let's say it's a product manager, they ensure that the data groundedness happens. They work with the engineers to have the tracking ready and get everything done. Without it, all of those go to skip requests. Okay, so where are we at time? So I have a few notes as well. I'll share this with you, but I'd probably go to the demo instead of going through this because I have something good to share in the demo. Any questions, any discussion so far before I go to the demo?
I think a couple of questions. One's around do you define the metric yourself or do you rely on the stakeholder? And then there's another one that maybe I can jump in on because you can answer it in the chat. But what about in the case of EDA type analysis?
Okay. I mean, the metric question, guys, it's defining metrics and coming up with we actually have Kai actually shared how do you define metric. We have like an entire segment in our course that talks about it, but it's the most important part as well because all these steps that come at the start of your work, if they're defined wrong, then your entire work goes haywire. To ensure that you come up with a framework of what a metric means and what is the type of metric you want to how do you want to define it, and you work with the product partners or the decision makers, whoever it is, into understand the goal of the metric, why you want the metric, and what is the decisions that it's going to help change in the product. Once you get those decisions from the product partner, I think it's the data person that comes up and accepts and verifies and validates the metric. But you want really tight partnership with your decision makers and product partners to ensure that they are on board and they know what they're going against, because you don't want to be vague. You need to be very sure about the specifics, and as a data person you need to come in with the caveats and frameworks around it, because you don't want the metric to be too specific in a certain area. You want also, it doesn't have to be too vague, so high up that it doesn't help make any decisions, right? So as a data person, you bring that perspective, and as a product or finance or whoever is the partner that you're working with, they need to bring their perspective of the goals that they are trying to achieve with that metric. So that would be my answer for the metric one. But yeah. And hi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have a session next week actually. That's free. It's called Developing North Star Metrics with AI. So if anyone wants to join that, I just dropped a link in the chat. And if you can't make it, but if you sign up, we'll get you the recording that for free as well. Um, there's actually another question in here. This is a little off topic, but not super off topic. Are you guys already building agentic systems for self-serve analytics at your companies? What is the expectation now from analytics folks? So I think there's two directions for this. There's the agentic analytics where the data team is building their own agentic systems to um, either automate out their work in such a way that is more robust or faster, so increasing breadth and depth of the analysis. But the agentic system, the the analyses are still done by the data team, but it's just through, the agentic systems they build more than just like direct SQL, Python, R, or whatever. That's something that we've been doing for several months, that all of our students have been doing for several months. And we're seeing this as kind of like the new, I would say, expectation for data professionals is moving from doing analysis yourself to building agentic systems that do a lot of that work for you where it makes sense, and then validating that analyses. The other side of the coin is like building self-serve analytic systems for, the rest of the company, other orgs where they're actually like someone from the marketing department has a question, they're able to type it in some sort of centralized agentic tool and have the analysis themselves. There's a ton of enterprise solutions working on this, right? Companies that have like hundreds of millions of dollars in funding trying to solve this problem. This is a much more complicated problem because they cannot validate the answer themselves. In the case of, a data professional building out an agentic system and running the analysis, they can look at the numbers, they can look at the code, and they can say like, yeah, this is right or wrong. They can review it just like a software engineer would review the code that like agentic coding tool would output. So we focus on the former and less on the latter, although we are kind of in talks with a few partnerships with some of those enterprise solutions, and we're happy to talk more about that offline or on one of our courses.
Awesome.
Maybe I'll
Nitin,
let you, there's some other questions here, but I'll let you, maybe like if you want to keep going and we can get to these.
yeah, we can get at the end. Sure. Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to give you a bunch of, like, because you signed up, guys, because you signed up for this, I'm going to give you a bunch of, free PDF resources as well, that contains all this information that I shared and a lot more. For example, like how do you come up with the right question, give you a bunch of examples of some questions that you could ask in your interviews. If there's a question that comes up, what is the type of example that you need to ask and stuff. So for example, yeah, so definitely check them out. I'm going to send them over an email. Okay, what are we doing right now? I'm going to have two demos. Hopefully, time permits. So the first one is going to be in Claude Web UI. I'm sure if you join our a bunch of other courses, we like the intro to Claude Code. You could do all of this in Claude Code. My second demo would look at that. But since if you don't have Claude Code, or if you have not used it with our repo, this is something what you could do with Claude Web UI. Okay, I'm sure this is something that you could do even with ChatGPT as well. Okay, so this is a prompt I gave it here. And what does it say? It basically tells that you are a question quality coach. Your job is not to answer questions or do analysis. Your job is to help me turn a vague question into a sharp, answerable, and something but fast, but coaching me through the few targeted questions, right? I gave it three modes. I gave it a work mode, basically, if this is a question related to your work, and I gave it an interview mode. Let's say if this is a question that you were asked in an interview and you're prepping for interviews, right? This is something that the interview mode would help you. And there's a rank mode. Let's say you have a bunch of options, and there's like a vague question. How do you rank all different questions? And then it basically has step one, running the three check framework that I just shared with you. And step two is something that talks about how does this framework work for interviews, and then how does the rank mode works, right? And then it talks about synthesizing it in step four. So begin and look at this. Begin by asking for my vague question, request a problem, and whether it's a work situation or interview situation, and a problem you should rank framings for. So this is all the entire input. I'm giving it to Claude Web UI, and let me ask it a question and see what it gives as an answer. Okay.
Can you drop the prompt in the chat too, Sravya,
Oh,
so
I can
people
do
are
that.
asking?
Okay, let me just do that so that you
And
don't
someone
have.
asked if they can transform this into a skill.
Oh, yeah. That's a wonderful question. This is something that, we have a free repo. I'm sure Sean might have shared it. We'll share it again in the email. But you could look through our free repo and look through like the skills and agents that we already built, right? But if that's something that you need help with, we actually have the Intro to Cloud Code Analytics workshop where you could, work with us. But yes, these are some things that you could definitely build skills and agents for. Cool. So I gave you that, and I'm giving you my simpler question as well. Okay. Yeah. So what's my question? Now that I gave it the entire prompt, I'm asking it, it's a work situation. My VP just slacked me. Hey, can you look into our churn numbers? They seem high, and leadership is asking about it. Seems familiar, at least familiar for me. There's so many of these type of questions that keep coming, right? So what does it say? It says running the three check framework on looking into our churn numbers. Guess what does it say? Decision tied. No, there's no decision in this question, so it crosses it out. Is it data grounded? Kinda. Churn is measurable, but high versus what? So it's not also fully data grounded. So that's kinda a maybe. It's not a fully no, but it's almost a maybe. And what about specific enough? No metric, no segment, no time frame. So and also there is no definition of what done means, because you could just keep answering this question for weeks and weeks and still not get to the answer that the requester is asking for, right? So this fails two out of the three. And it talks about let's close the biggest gap first. So it is asking, if you got a clear answer on churn, what would leadership actually do differently? And it also asks for examples. Fund a retention initiative? Does it change pricing? Reallocate to the growth team? Just report a number upward. So what is this decision feeding, right? So it's asking me the question, and let's give it an answer. So I just gave it. You could, guys, this is something I'm doing. Uh, you could have something entirely different that you could work with. Okay. So what I'm giving it is figuring out whether it's one segment we need to fix or it's a broad problem. Basically, where do I point the retention team? So yeah, there is a decision now. You could try the same thing with another answer and see what you get, and you could share that with us. But I gave it this to demo something. Okay, so it says, good, this is a real decision. Where to point the retention team? That makes this a resource allocation question, right? Not a reporting exercise, which is pretty good. Now it is talking about the next gap being data. So the first gap, the decision tide, is done. Now we are looking at data. Which of these exists cleanly? Plan tier, acquisition channel, tenure, cohort. Oh my God, we could have so many things, right? So let me give it a few things. Let's say that I kind of have. I'm saying I've got plan type, region, tenure, monthly revenue, and last login per account. Now it says it's a solid one, right? So it's basically asking, how do you know you're done, right? The final one. And let's say I'm going to give it, uh, I basically end this when I get a ranked view of which segment is churning the worst. So I know where to focus. So that's where I'm going to end it. Awesome. So it is now giving me the sharpened versions of the same question. Look at this. Because you could have multiple styles, right? And it's giving me all of those styles. It's giving me a concentrated view and it's recommending that. It's basically giving me which segments, the plan, tenure, region, and stuff that I could look at. It is giving me a rate versus volume view. It is giving me a trend view, and these are a bunch of options. So it's asking if, like, what is something that you want out of these things, right? I mean, I could keep going until I get, but I want to get to the Claude Code demo as well. Or maybe let's do one more thing. So you could go on with this until you get to a specific question, but I want to try one more thing for the interview question and then go to Claude Code. Okay. Okay, let me just say, okay, let's move on to interview question. Okay. And this one's an interview question. How would you measure the impact of a new recommendation algorithm? Right? So it is basically doing the same thing. It goes to the interview mode. It is not in the, it is not in your the work mode. And look at this. It is asking about clarifying metric, understanding context, planning the cuts, confirming the decision. Trust me, guys, I've done like at least hundreds of interviews, and you would expect people to do this, but no, people actually don't do this at all, especially confirming the decision. So you want to ensure that you do this 2-minute decomposition of this question live with the interviewer, and keep asking them for, do they agree? Do they want you to go down this direction or not? And hopefully this prompt helps you to do some mock interviews yourself. Okay, so let me move on to Claude Code, and I'd like to share you a Claude Code demo. Okay, let's try to do it in the next 5 minutes so that we'll have around 15 minutes for answering any questions that you have. Okay, so where am I? What are you looking at? You're looking at Claude Code, and this is Visual Code, VS Code. We actually teach you in one of our courses how to, install all of this yourself. And have how do you have the repo? So the repo that I have on my left is our entire repo that we built all of this. For example, if you look at the repo for the bootcamp, this is the repo that we give for bootcamp. These are all the skills that we have: analysis, design, design spec, and all of that stuff. But I'll get into the detail later. Let's jump into the Claude Code prompt. Okay, so what am I asking here? I'm asking it, you are the question framing layer of an AI analyst system. Like I told you, we have so many of these skills: the analysis design, archive analysis, so many of these. And I'm asking it, instead, if I have a vague request, like look into our churn numbers, they seem high, and leadership is asking, what is the process that the Claude Code repo that we built is going to go through, right? And this is an ASCII diagram of everything that Claude Code runs for you. Let's say you have this question, you have this repo at your hand, right? Look at this, gate 0. This is like the first gate that it looks at. 3 checks. Decision tied, fail. No, it's not great, like we said. Is it data grounded? Fail. The churn numbers, which table, which churn, no metric is named. And what about the specific enough? Again, a failure, right? So it basically is giving me a score of 0 by 3, and it basically is telling me that I'm rejecting it, and we are going to, you need sharpening it, right? And in case I ask for the entire ASCII diagram for you to understand what all things the system is capable of doing, so that you'd understand to get to a specific question. Let's say we get to a better place, and what does the skill pipeline look like, right? So this is invoked and there's another thing. All of these get invoked to sharpen the question too, right? So question framing, sharpening. So it basically helps you to get to the right question. And what does it ask you? It basically asks you, hey, what is your goal? Is your goal retention? Is your goal revenue? Or is it just a broad narrative, right? And what is the decision you want to do? What changes if churn is high? And what does high mean? Is it related to the target, trend, or a cohort? And who decides and by when? This skill is the most important skill, the question framing skill that goes through the 3-spec framework that we have, and ensuring that the question ladder gets done, right? And once that's done, it basically goes to the metric spec. This is basically the data groundedness, right? So what is the churn type? What are the multiple steps here within the, what's the denominator? Who is at risk? Is it like a voluntary one? Is it an involuntary one? Basically, all multiple segments that you get to within like understanding what the churn metric actually means and what are the multiple segments you can divide this churn metric by, right? And then there is data audit. You want to make sure that that particular data is actually available to query, right? And you want to make sure that the data is clean, that everything is reliable, and you can actually go and query it. Because specificity is not the only thing you need. You actually need data that you can rely on to actually go and execute, right? And then another important thing is actually, now that you know all of these things, how do you want to prioritize your question? What are the other things that are at stake? What is the amount of dollars that's at stake? What is the, what is the stop rule? When do you think you'll stop this? And is it worth the return on investment? Like the amount of return that you'd get on this investment, is it worth your time or not? Right? And these are basically the forks that we go through, like the metric, baseline, window, segmentation, the ranking logic, the threshold, the unit, the output decision. All of these is baked into the skills and agents in the system. Most of this, I would say, is already part of the free repo, but our AI Analyst Plus repo that we share as part of our courses has even more detailed description into like what like one, if you ask it a vague question, how can the repo help you get to a better place? Yeah, so this is how it looks like. And one final thing I want to share with you is I want to ask something. Oh, where are we? Maybe I can skip it so that we'll have 15 minutes. Is that what do you want to do, Sean?
We'll
I
go ahead
think,
and go ahead and ask your question, and then we can see if people have questions. If people have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat now, and we'll get to them after
yeah.
Sravya goes through this.
So it basically went through the question, right? And it basically gave the exact sharpened question that I know we didn't give all these answer, but because for the demo's purpose, I basically took something based on few assumption and basically has a sharpened question for us, right? Has monthly voluntary logo churn risen about 3% target in the last 2 quarters? And if so, which customer segment is it? By plan, tier, and tenure, and is that driving the increase? And so leadership can decide whether to fund a retention intervention this quarter or not. So this is the sharpened question that solves all these forks, like you see here: the metric, the baseline, the window, the segmentation, the ranking logic, the threshold, the unit, which is customers, like accounts, seats, and whatnot, and the output or decision, right? And it also ensures that all the checks are done, the decision type, the data groundedness, and specific enough. And the most important thing, the rejection condition. If you remember, we talked about having a hypothesis and ensuring that when do we reject the hypothesis should also be like documented and tracked and thought of. And if voluntary logo churn is less than 3%, the target across both quarters and no single segment, that's when you say that the report is not elevated and recommend no spend, and we stop. So we have a rejection condition here, which is very important, right? And then we have the data scope note. What is the source, what it excludes, what is the grain, and what is do we do if you're blocked? Yeah. So it goes through all of this and it gives you this. And this, guys, is just the first part of the system. If maybe I have something here to share with you. So if you want to understand the entire system of what actually happens, now that you have a question that we basically share in our courses, I can briefly share with you while we could probably keep taking questions while I run this. Maybe Sean.
Yeah, I think something to emphasize about this is like reframing questions, like it sounds easy. It's just hard. There's two kind of there's obvious things when like a vague question comes in, you're like, oh, that's super vague. And then there's like questions that come in where like you kind of don't realize it's vague, but it actually is because it doesn't have everything here. Like it doesn't have I've started plenty of analysis in the past and be like, oh, I have my metric, I have like the kind of decision that's going to be made from it. But then like there's all these other components that are on like, oh, like actually, what window are we talking about? Oh, what are the filters that need to be applied? What's like the threshold we care about? And I go back to my product manager or designer or engineer, and everyone's like, oh yeah, I don't know. What do you think? What about this? And like this just like gets everything done up front for you. And it's not that it's like, like there's no math here. There's no like crazy, like sophisticated like thinking. It's just like all these things that we don't have time to do or kind of like forget to do. And now it's like every single analysis you do, every single little question, you can run it through this system. It's going to take a few minutes and your like question is going to become so much more powerful. And you're going to get a like I think Shravi was showing the slides earlier, like a decision around like, hey, do we kick the analysis off? Do we need to like plan more? Do we just like put this in like a backlog to do later, or do we like politely decline the analysis? So it kind of guarantees up front that you go from just like these are fake numbers, but like imagine like 80% of the analyses you do don't actually have action come from it. By adding these gates at the very beginning, that becomes like drastically smaller and you get a much larger percent of your analyses and the time that you spend actually being actioned on in the company. And that means that like yeah, the company's doing better. That means you're invited to more important rooms around like how do we make decisions around the company. That means you get the promotion, right? So it's a really like not crazy challenging skill to learn, but it's so important and so many people miss it. And it's not just junior people. I know senior managers of data science who suck at this, who are just like, oh yeah, oh we should track wow. And it's just like no, dude. Like people who focus their whole thing around like reporting a metric and not actually relating the metric back to like the actual reason we're here to build some sort of user value of a product. I know CEOs who suck at this. I know like leaders in product who suck at this. So it's not just like a junior thing also. And now you can have systems where you just like build it in to like automate out that like those errors. Um, yeah, so Shravya, you're sharing here like the full system here, and you can see like the sharpening the question is just like the very first part of this kind of end-to-end um, agentic system that we built and that our students and clients have like built on top of like way more than us.
And then you start with input, and then there's the stage one. You basically scope and plan, and there's a data audit that happens, and then you actual now execution starts. You basically measure and what exactly happens there, and you diagnose, right? If let's say you find something in the measurement, how do you diagnose that? And then you stress test it, and then you close the loop. There's so many other things as well. I tried to get it to, so this is what happens. So it basically, if you run analysis pipeline, these are a bunch of things that get called the agents and skills that get called as well, which question framing, hypothesis, data explorer, source tie out, the descriptive analytics, the root cause investigation. So you'll see all of them here on the side. These are my skills. These are the repo skills that we have here. The deck critic, if you look at it, the data quality check, comparing data sets, closing the loop. So we have you could invoke all of these skills by themselves if you want to stay in control, and if you want to ensure that what is the output of this particular stage of my data analysis, which I would recommend 80% of the time. But let's say you've done this loop multiple times and you know the type of question you have and the output you need, then in those cases I just run the end-to-end pipeline that basically goes through all of these skills one after the other and gives me an entire pipeline. And since I've done this so many times and validated every step already, I'm confident that my final end-to-end pipeline is a good one. So just wanted to share with you the capability of the entire system here. And it, to be honest, doesn't cover other areas as well, like experimentation and tracking. That's going to be a different set of system and skills that get generated. But yeah, I'll stop here.
Yeah, we can pop out a few questions. So if you got questions, drop them in the chat. Um, you can raise your hand and ask them as well. two questions that are basically the same question here. So Annika asked, like, what is the difference between our three courses? Yeah, they said they're working as a product analytics in their current org. Their goal is to fully integrate agentic AI workflows and tools into their work. And bonus if it helps in interviews. And then another person asked, hey, the repo looks really great. What we learned from the paid sessions. I can answer these. So we have four courses actually, technically. So we have, and they're all coming up really soon. In the next few weeks, a bunch are kicking off. They're recently ranked Maven's top 100 courses also. And so Maven is running a site-wide sale on their top courses where it's 25% off, I think, through the end of this week. So that stops on Sunday. That's better than any deal we give. We usually give like 20 or 10% off, but just something to flag. So there's four courses. There's one. I'll say what they all are and then I'll go through them. Intro to Claude Code Workshop, Claude Code Analytics Workshop. There's a Claude Code Analytics Bootcamp, Advanced AI Analytics Bootcamp, and then AI Analytics for Builders. So our Intro to Claude Code Analytics Workshop is super introductory. If you have used Claude Code before, you probably don't need to take this. If you've never, this is for people who really have never used Claude Code before. It's like our like introductory course. It's $50, and we spend 3 hours and we just walk through step by step how to install Claude Code in terminal, install get VS Code going. You clone the repo, and then you run your first analysis end to end on some synthetic data using the repo. So this is open for anyone. There's no prerequisites. Like you can never have coded before in your life, but we do find that like that setup stage is challenging for some people. And once you get past that first step, you're kind of off to the races. Like you're all like curious, smart, driven people. So this is like just our goal to like, hey, let's get people set up and running their first analysis end to end. So that's coming up next Wednesday on June 10th, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific time. And then we'll record it also. If you sign up, we'll send out the recording. We have a bunch of people who just followed along with recording. And there's like also a step-by-step like guide you can walk through as well. So that's the workshop. Super introductory though. But great for a first step into Claude Code. Then we run a Claude Code Analytics Bootcamp. Not this weekend, but next weekend we'll have that. So it's Saturday and Sunday, and then we have a bit of async material following through the week that you can as you start working with Claude Code Analytics at work. And then we have office hours that's optional on the following Friday after you've ran through the agentic system at work for a week. This is about building agentic analytic systems. So it's about, learning the foundations of agentic systems, how they differ from chat. You start by building out your own skills and agents. Then you run some analysis with those. Then you implement our like full AI Analyst Plus repo, which is kind of our private repo we're constantly developing on. You you port over skills to that from what you built your own. You build on top of that. You connect to data warehouses. And then we do some kind of like 101 previews into stuff around like context management and validation and open source. But like those are like more like just like introductory parts of it. Our advanced bootcamp then goes all in on that. So our advanced bootcamp is focused on how do you build evaluation systems and validation systems to know that the agentic analytics output is correct. How do you manage context across your team and organize it even like for yourself? How does this perform against other models? So this Claude Code Analytics Bootcamp is just for Claude Code, advanced AI analytics. We go into Codex. We look at open source models as well. And then, so that's another 2-day boot camp. We might extend it. We're experimenting a little bit with the boot camps right now. So we have a 2-day with some async and then office hours for the Claude Code Analytics boot camp in a week from now. And then in July, we're actually going to move this and try it on weekdays. So we'll do like just 2 hours a day, Monday to Friday, instead of 4 to 5 hours a day, Saturday and Sunday. So that's an option for you. We iterate on our courses every time we have a cohort to try and make them better. So that's some of the feedback we got back. And then our last one is AI Analytics for Builders. That's a 5-week course. And this is more about like end-to-end analytical thinking. It's less about building the agentic system and more about like uh, how do I use agentic systems to do the actual analysis work. And so you could think of this as kind of like your classic data science analytics course, except the execution layer is no longer in SQL or in Python directly. It's in Claude Code or Codex. So we start the first week is all around kind of like framing questions. The second week is all about like setting up your tools in your system. Third week is about correlative analysis. So think like trend analysis, segmentation, root cause analysis. Fourth week is around causal. So think experiment, design and analysis, and causal inference. And then fifth week is around kind of like getting insight to impact. So it's about presentation, managing stakeholders, and that kind of thing. Yes, those are our four courses. And like I mentioned, all of those are 25% off right now on Maven until Sunday, I think is when they end that. But so if you just go to the course, you don't even the promo code is top 100, I think, or Maven 100,
Even
but it'll
100.
be auto applied since it's a site-wide sale at the moment. And then if you miss it this week and you want to go on later on, usually we offer some, if you need a promo code, DM me. Usually we give like 10 to 20% off folks who come to the Lightning lessons. All right. That was pretty salesy question answers. So what are some other questions? Oh, Maxine was asking my post about moving from tech into acting. No, that's just a joke. I'm not going into acting. That'd be pretty good. There's plenty of people who get into Hollywood later in life, so maybe I'll do that in my 70s. No, I am leaving my full-time job though. I'm currently a principal data scientist for a legal AI firm or a legal AI tech company, and tomorrow's my last day as we go full into agentic analytics research, education, and consulting. So, leading, co-founding this lab with Sravya and Hi. No acting yet, but who knows? What other questions we got? Have you guys noticed the difference between 4.7 and 4.8 for analytics? Man, I feel like it kind of topped out at 4.6. And I've read a few people who leverage it for more like product managing stuff and less for coding stuff. And their opinion, I don't know if you listen to like Claire Vaux's podcast, but I think she said something like as the 4.7 and 4.8 models got better at coding, it got worse at strategic thinking. And I kind of think the same thing for analytics. I often just try and set my model back to 4.6 because it does a great job with analytics and it's faster and cheaper. But I don't know, 4.7, 4.8, I don't think it like deteriorates the analysis, but I'm not getting much of an added benefit. So whenever a new model comes out, we test them. Um, and then also OpenAI, they just released a data analysis flow this past week too. I was actually talking to some folks on the Codex team there. And so we'll be investigating that quite a bit. We don't want to we've kind of like primarily been focused on Claude Code the past few months, but now that we have some more time, we'll be investing on that. And then also open source LLMs. Hi has been investigating that at least. I'll be in our advanced boot camp, but we'll probably do some sort of free session on it. Haven't tried Codex mobile Valeria. Um, how Anthropic enables self-search analytics. Oh yeah, I'll have to check this out. Thanks for sharing Madhumita.
Yeah, that's cool.
The self-service stuff's so interesting. I mean, it's just like there's not a great solution out there for even any of the enterprise stuff around like how do you validate that the number is correct? Like Snowflake, um, Cortex is amazing. Right, it's great SQL stuff, but there's not really a great system of like saying like, hey, is this number correct or not? Like when I talk to my analytics engineers, I'm just like, hey, how do you know this is like correct? And their answer is usually like, oh, I think it should be if we build this table out. And it's like, man, I've built like really good semantic views where I'm sure no one can screw up the number. And then I give it to like someone in the C-suite and they've figured out some creative way to screw up the number. I'm like, why did you ask it that? So like we focus a lot in our advanced course on like validation. It's kind of why we're leaning more into like empowering people who like are checking the numbers themselves. Otherwise, you end up in this weird situation where like you're just in this like reviewer mode where like say like one of your stakeholders runs an analysis and then sends it to you, and then you just have to like go through the whole trace of the conversation they had with the agent and check the number anyways, and it would have been just faster if you ran it yourself. We've talked about OpenClaw a bit, but we haven't done anything there. Any other questions? I know we're over. I have like 5, 10 more minutes if we have other questions though.
Great set
Uh,
of
t
questions.
Tomorrow we're gonna do. We have a bunch of stuff coming up in the next 2 weeks that's free, that I can just drop links in for right now. So tomorrow we have one on agentic experiment design and analysis. Um, this is free. We're actually working on a separate repo called Agent XP. It's like pretty like early stage right now, but it'll be an open source thing, kind of like the AI Analyst, but it's like purely focused on experimentation. And the goal of it is to remove the bias that the humans have on experimentation. Because it's like with experiments, I don't know how many of you have ran experiments. I ran a lot, and it's kind of like you're grading your own homework. Like the people like me who's building the product, building the feature is the same people who's creating the experiment and then reading the results. So it's like you really want it to be good. You're like so incentivized to like find some part of this experiment that was a success. And so this repo, it's not necessarily around like the instrumentation of the experiment itself. It's more around like how do we set up and automate guardrails so that like we're not biasing the results, and we can make sure that's like, oh yeah, this is truly a success or not. Kind of like how we did the question framing here. So we'll have that, and then Sravya is leading another really cool one next week called Publish Analysis Everywhere with Claude Code. This is about using MCPs to get your analysis output in like several different platforms. This is going to be really cool. I think that's one of like
Yeah.
the really powerful parts of this system is like the MCP um, work. And then talked about this other one already, which kind of goes hand in hand with this question frame one is develop North Star metrics with AI. And so this will be, well, today was around like question framing. This will involve some of that, but it will be around how do you like create really rock solid metrics that actually reflect like the user value of what you're trying to build. So those are all free sessions. Um, Check those out. And uh, what was the reason behind keeping this open source? Yeah, I mean, my philosophy is now it's like there's a couple of reasons. Like one, like I think like building is so cheap now that it's kind of a little pointless to like try and like build product and put it behind a paywall for some things. It's like you got anyone here can go build the AI analyst. Like, like we teach a boot camp on it where it's like we believe in like this are a few days, people should have like the skills it takes to build it themselves. So it's like um that's one reason. And then the other reason I think is just like since like everything is like changing and developing so fast, like I just think the best way to learn is having kind of some sort of open source community where we're all kind of like testing stuff. A lot of the really like I don't know, valuable parts of the boot camps and the 5 week course for me is all the live time with all of everyone who joins, because people take what they learn and then immediately use it at work that week and find out way more better ways to implement it than I would. And then we take that and we share out across everyone. So it's like we're entering this field in agentic analytics where it's not like, hey, like there's decades and decades of stats best practices that you can just kind of read books on, or like people just have like the expertise and know what it is. It's like I don't know if this is the best way to do it. I don't know what the best way to do it is going to be in a month or two from now. So I think it's really important for people to kind of like be like learning in public. Like I think you can go like fast alone, but like way further together, right? So that's like the reason behind open source. Open source is also a nice hedge, right? If I screw things up, it's like, hey man, it's free. Like you didn't pay money for
Mhm.
that. Um, what other
Oh.
questions? I got a couple of minutes, but we can also close out.
And I'll send you a bunch of PDFs, guys. I'll be sending you 3 PDFs with some prompts and, and later, as soon as we have the recording as well.
Cool. Yeah, so check out that Maven 100 deal. I think it runs till June 7, whenever Sunday is. They give that 25% off. It's not just our course, it's like all the top courses on Maven. So definitely would recommend checking out Maven in the next 3 days because there's other stuff on there too. If you're not looking for analytics, um, they can get a really good deal on right now. All right. Thanks, everyone. Hopefully, we'll see some of you tomorrow at the experiment, the agentic experiment design and analysis one.
And get your
But
questions there as well. We'll mostly have like last 10, 15 minutes like we did today. Okay.
yep.
Thank you so much attending. Bye, guys.
See ya.